Hey, Dr. Rick Marks with the Relate Well Institute. So good of you to join us today. Today we're going to talk about the core value system of the Relate Well program and process. Now, just so you know, this core value system that we call the four protectors of an us, really, folks, did not come from the fact that I have a PhD and 2 master's degrees. Some of you have heard my testimony before. I grew up in a broken home. My dad had an anger problem that he got from his father, and I was around 10 or 11. My dad bought a cow prod, would shock us. My little brother got the bulk of the abuse. Now, the fact that I have a PhD and 2 master's degrees should tell you, it's not that I'm smart, that I'm an overachiever. I was the one of the 4 kids that jumped the hurdles, did whatever I needed to do in order to stay out of trouble. The problem is, I walked away with a lot of brokenness and a lot of emotional damage. But you don't know what you don't know. I went into my adult life, chronological adult life, emotionally as a child. That's right, folks. This guy in front of you today, emotionally was a child. And because I was emotionally childish, I handled conflict in childish ways. Got stationed in Jacksonville, Florida, where I met my wife, Luella, who also came from an alcoholic, abusive home. So 2 broken people found each other. We loved each other, but we did not know how to love because we did not know how to relate well. You know, in order to love well, you got to know how to relate well. We didn't. And when conflict came, the best our brains had was emotionally immature ways to deal with conflict, not mature ways to deal with conflict. And about 9.5 years into the marriage, I was confronted at a marriage intensive that I had kind of drugged my wife to. I want to learn this material, become this great Christian counselor, right? As I'm in the 3rd day of this 4-day intensive training, Luella's with me, I learned in that journey, in our small group that day, that I had not earned the right to comfort my wife. The small group leader who informed me of that was a friend of mine. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, Scripture says. When he said that to me, I wanted to hit him. I was angry at him. I wanted to cry. I wanted to run and hide. But I knew down deep inside he was right. You see, folks, I was so manipulative. I was so childish. I was so immature, passive-aggressive. I was training Luella's brain to not bond to me, to be guarded with me. And in the hallway of that church in Austin, Texas, way back there in 1995, I made a decision. I will become the man who earns the right to comfort his wife. I will change me. And in that journey of seeking to transform my life and change who I am, 4 words kept emerging in my spirit on what I needed to become. Now, let me say this before we get into the 4 words. The 4 words I refer to today as HREG. H equals R-E-G. Humility equals respect, empathy, and goodwill. That's part of the core value system of Relate Well. In other words, when I said I wanted to become these, I didn't want to have humility. I wanted to become humility. I didn't want to have integrity. I wanted to become integrity. I didn't want to have respect. I wanted to become respect. It's the difference between God having love and God is love. Scripture said he is love. It doesn't say he has it. It says he is it. And because he is love, no matter what he does, it is loving. But you can have love but not be love. That means you can manipulate love to some end. And my mentors and teachers taught me, become respect, become empathy, become goodwill, become integrity. That's a way of being. And so everything we're talking about, when we talk about the 4 value system of HREG, what we're really advocating to you as you listen is we don't want you to have humility, respect, empathy, and goodwill. We want you to position your heart to humility so that you become it. So you become respect, empathy, and goodwill. So let's jump in to the 4 words rather quickly here. Take a look at them and how that links to how you want to live your life and treat people, as well as how does that link to love? Okay then, so let me go a little bit more in depth into what I mean by HREG. Humility, respect, empathy, and goodwill. And by the way, remember, these 4 values that we live by and relate well were really a part of my own journey of transformation. When I learned in 1995 that I'd not earned the right to comfort my wife because of being so manipulative and immature, I realized then I need to make a lot of changes. And the 4 words, what we now call the 4 protectors of an us, Back in those days, I just called them the 4 words. And by the way, no one knew that I was living this way. I just did it because I needed to grow up and become a healthy, mature adult. And so the first word that kept showing up was goodwill. Now, what is goodwill? Goodwill is benevolence towards another person. It's no matter what I do or don't do. I'm not seeking to hurt you, harm you, invalidate you, negate you. Whenever you do something to intentionally harm another person, that is called ill will. And if you want to sow ill will, you can. No judgments on my part. But remember, you will reap what you sow. Or in the personal development field, it's called the law of attraction. Anger attracts anger. Ill will attract ill will. And so I began to ask myself, is what I'm doing right here, right now, in a moment, am I treating people with goodwill? And here's what I learned. If I treat people with goodwill, then I knew for a fact I was treating them in a loving way, in a caring way. Here's why. Love and care never, ever, ever treats people with ill will. It always treats people with goodwill. The second word that kept showing up in my spirit was respect. Now, respect is honoring and valuing another person. To cut someone off when they're talking, disrespectful. Call people names, disrespectful. To try and control someone to get what you want out of them or manipulate them in any form is disrespectful. One thing I've learned about life and health and maturity is all people are humans. And because they're humans, they have dignity inherently. And you never, ever, ever disrespect a person's dignity. Here's the other thing I learned. When I was treating my wife or my kids or even you with respect, I was treating you in a loving way. Here's what I've learned. Love always treats people with goodwill and respect. And so if you ask me today, how do I define love? How do I, as they say in the research world, operationalize the definition of love? I operationalize love as I'm treating you with goodwill and respect, because when you treat people with goodwill and respect, you're treating them in a loving, caring way. The third word that kept showing up in my spirit was empathy. Now, empathy, by definition, is the vicarious experience of another person's thoughts and feelings. It's being able to step into their sandals and walk the walk that they have walked. It's identifying with someone's thoughts and feelings in a moment. That is empathy. We're going to use empathy in that term, but in a broader term, in that empathy always sends the message, I care. I believe strongly the worst message you send to any relationship is the message, I don't care. And if you send the message, I don't care enough, and those people in your life figure out or believe you don't care, they're going to walk out of your life. I find it very disingenuous when you treat people in uncaring, disrespectful ways, and they walk out of your life one day and you're bothered by that. I go, why would you be bothered by that? You should be expecting it. Because once you convince someone you don't care, you put them in a position to make a decision they never wanted to make. And so I began to ask myself, not only am I treating Love with goodwill, and am I treating her with empathy, but am I with respect, but I'm also treating her with empathy. Am I caring? Now, this is very important. This word love is grossly misused in culture. Example, I love my wife, I love my children, I love the U.S. military, and I love mint chocolate chip ice cream. I love all of them, but you hear the misuse of that word love, don't you? And here's something I realized about 30 years ago. What if I changed the word love to a different word? What difference would it make in how I live my life and how I treated people? We can start with some Bible verses. For God so loved the world, love your neighbor, love one another, love your enemy. It's like, I don't know about that one, right? Think of it this way. Let's change the word love to this. John 3:16, for God so loved the world. How about this? For God so valued the world. You see, you can change the word love to the word value. Because here's what I've learned. Love never devalues the object of love. In other words, I do value my wife and I do value my children. I do not value the U.S. military ever near as much. And personally, folks, I don't value mint chocolate chip ice cream at all. I just love it. You get the idea. Because love and value can be used interchangeably, you can now ask yourself, do you treat people around you, particularly those close to you, in a way that values them or devalues them? You know, God never, ever, ever devalues us. He never devalues his bride, the church. Now, she devalues him. She'll be disrespectful back. She'll send the message, I don't care back. But in the end, he never devalues. And so I began to ask myself, am I treating people with goodwill? Am I treating you with respect? And am I caring, empathy? And here's the last word, humility. Humility, research shows the more humble you are, the more powerful you become as an individual, particularly emotionally. Very healthy, mature adults, emotional maturity. The corporate world calls it emotional intelligence. Whatever you want to call it. The Old Testament way is wise and fools. I like mature versus immature. But healthy, mature adults are actually humble people. Immature adults are prideful. And the more prideful you are, you'll be ill will, disrespect, and a lack of empathy. The more humble you are, you'll have goodwill, respect, and empathy, because these three things require humility. And when humility is a part of your life, God gives grace to the humble, but he does resist the proud. Now, what is humility? It's a modest assessment of oneself. You know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, and you're not bothered by your weaknesses. You're just aware of them, and you monitor them, and you work on them. That's what humble people do. Humble people are not bothered when someone cuts them off in traffic. They just let them go. Pride will pursue that person. Pride will stare at them. Pride will point at them. Humility doesn't. Humility says, why would I let you rob me of my joy? Number one, what you did had nothing to do with me. It's just about who you are. You see, humility is a powerful way to live. And when we live a life of humility, respect and empathy and goodwill come out of that. So what we ended up calling it over the years was HREG, H-R-E-G. Humility equals respect, empathy, and goodwill. And that was the value system I used in my life to become a healthy, mature adult so I could earn the right to comfort my wife one day. Because I had to become that guy and quit being the immature child. Well, now you understand the 4 words, all right? But the graphic is the 4 words circled around the center called us. Us. What is us? When I learned this principle, and I learned it about my marriage, and then I realized later it applied to all relationships. So we're going to use a married example here. As we're going through this, I want you to give me a little bit of grace, all right? You see, the most important part of a marriage, in the Christian world, people would say, well, it's God. If that's true, how do you explain Christians in divorce court and non-Christians with really strong, healthy marriages? If we're honest with integrity, anybody can have a good marriage, Christian or not. So what is it that it's going to take to have a really good marriage? It's the third part of the marriage. And when the third part wins, you both win. When the third part loses, you both lose. See, the most important part of the marriage is not the husband, it's not the wife. It's the third part. And I just kind of alluded to, it's not God. Why? Well, how do you explain non-Christians with great marriages and Christians without it? What's the third part of the marriage? It's what the Old Testament, Genesis 2, refers to as one flesh. The most important part of the marriage is not the husband, it's not the wife, it's the idea of one flesh. I turned that into a different language to make it more contemporary. It's not leave, cleave, become one. I call it leave, cleave, become us. Now, what is us? It's the same thing as one flesh, just a little more contemporary. But what is us? The most important part of marriage is us. Now, what is us? Us is not me, and it's not Luella. Us is the synergy that exists between her and I. It's the relationship itself. You see, every decision you make gives to you or it gives to us. There is no other option. And if the bulk of your decisions are based on what's best for you, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you live for you, you by yourself will kill us off. Here's why. It takes 2 to make an us, 1 to kill it. I'm going to say that again. It takes 2 to make it, only 1 to kill it. And in order to live for us, humility is essential. Pride will kill the usness off. Humility keeps it around. But how do you know when you have us in your marriage? How do you know when you have a one flesh marriage? Here's the answer. It's actually simple. You feel it. You actually feel it. When us is in the house, you feel the love, you feel the warmth, you feel the tenderness, you feel the connection. Not only do you feel it, your children feel it. Everybody knows when us is in the house. You can feel its presence and you can feel its absence. You know, when us is not in the house, you feel the angst, the tension, the coldness, the resentment, the bitterness, the indifference, the silence, the anger, and your kids can feel it too. So I always tell couples, you want 3 people in your bedroom every night, you, her, and us. Man, when us is in the bedroom at night, you sleep well. You cuddle, you snuggle. When us is not in the bedroom at night, it looks like this. Get your feet off me. You sleep back to back. You don't even talk to each other. Go sleep in another room. Wait a minute. We're supposed to be mature adults and you live that way? Folks, I grew up in a home that was that way. I am not doing that to myself or to my wife, and I wasn't going to do that to my kids when they were young. I was going to live for us. Why? It takes HREG to live for us. Now, 2 to make it, 1 to kill it. And when us wins, you both win. Your kids win. Your whole family wins. Now, this is really important. The usness in your marriage is different than who you are as an individual. In other words, us will do things that you won't do. Example, this guy right here, Rick Marks. I do not like malls. I don't go to malls. You will never see me in a mall. If you do see me in a mall, it is because I have to go to the mall. And if I have to go to the mall, I figure out where in the mall that store is. What entrance do you go to get that's closer to that store? I park near that entrance, go through that door, go to that store, get what I have to get, and I get out of the mall. Can I make it any plainer? I don't like malls. You know, the big company Simon is building these town centers around the country. All these big shops and stuff, right? I don't go there. We don't want, it's an outdoor mall. It's just a mall without a roof. That's all it really is. I call it deception. But you get the idea. All right? My wife likes the beach. I don't like the beach. I don't care about the beach. I think it's a waste of time to sit on the sand for 6 hours. Now, I was in the Navy for 12 years, so put me on a boat any day. But I don't believe you should be sitting on a beach. Got it? I don't like malls. She likes beaches. She likes malls. I don't like beaches. Luella and I are different. I'm a military history nut. I love going to visit battlefields. You with me? Luella, my wife, would die a physical death and never visit a battlefield. The point is individuals, we are different. Now, I'm 63 years old currently. On my 40th birthday, this was a present I was given by a bunch of friends. It was 3 nights and 4 days and a bed and breakfast in downtown Gettysburg. So those of you who know American history, that is a huge gift because that is the turning point of the Civil War. And the gift was better than that because it was during Civil War Heritage Week, which is the week of when the battle took place, July 1st through 3rd, when there are about 40,000 reenactors show up. And for a whole week, Gettysburg is turned back into that era. And the gift was better than that because they gave me tickets to sit in the bleachers in the hot sun of that field in the VIP section. That's right, folks. I got to sit out front and watch 4 days of reenactments from the front VIP section. And the gift was better than that because they were tickets for 2. You got it, and you guessed it. Us decided, my brother Don went. Because us knew my wife had no business being there. Here's the point. Us may not do everything together, but it will always be in agreement. And here's what I'm trying to teach you. Live for us, quit living for you. It requires humility. And by the way, when you quit living for you and you start living for who? Us. You will transform your marriage in a moment. Get out of yourself. It's not about me. I always tell couples who are premarital, If you don't want to be a we and you want to be a me, stay single. Marriage is giving up to the I for the we. You got to make a decision, or you actually do make decisions every single day if you're married. Live for you or live for us. And the way you know it's in the house is you feel its presence and you feel its absence. And every decision you make, just as much as it is with me, every decision I make gives to me or gives to us. There is no other option. It takes humility to get there. And here's what I learned. You notice in the graphic, the 4 words circle around the idea of us. They circle around it. Why? Because here's what I learned in my transformation journey. Whenever I treat anyone with humility, respect, empathy, and goodwill, HREG, by myself, I am protecting my usness with that person. You see, us has the highest meaning in the marital bond. But let's be honest, me and my kids have an us or we don't. Me and my friends have an us or we don't. A work team has an us or it doesn't, just by how they treat each other. You're a source of pain, you're a source of pleasure. If you treat people with HREG, you'll more often than not be a source of pleasure, and you'll feel us. If you treat people with the absence of HREG, the opposite, pride, disrespect, a lack of empathy, and ill will, well, then you're probably not going to be a source of pleasure. You're most likely going to be a source of pain. And when you're a source of pain, you ain't going to feel us. You're going to feel the anger, the hurt. And every decision you make gives to you or gives to us. And here's the thing. The 4 protectors of an us is HREG. Because when both of you choose to live out of HREG, humility, respect, empathy, and goodwill, both of you are protecting us from your lower animal brain and from other things going on around you. You see, because the highest way of living for life isn't for yourself. It's living for others, the idea of us. And so you get to decide day by day, moment by moment, just like I do. Live for you or live for us. Make us your priority in your relationship. And as an individual, make HREG the value system by which you govern your life. Become humility, respect, empathy, and goodwill. And when you do, you'll always be giving to us unconsciously. Because humility makes you think of others. Pride makes you think of yourself. It really is that simple. And that's the core value behind Relate Well. We now call those the 4 protectors. The protective wall of an us is HREG. This is Dr. Marks. Thanks for listening in.